really excited about today's video where I'll be talking with an old friend, Spencer Sands. Spencer and I used to be in a band together, and lately he's been teaching himself how to build and modify guitars. So I thought I'd talk to him to learn about his techniques for how he upgrades his guitars, how he builds guitars, how did he learn, what are the techniques he uses. I hope it's useful to you and interesting and inspires you to maybe look into how you can personalize your instruments. So, Spencer Sands, thank you so much for joining us on Strange Device. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's really fun to talk to you, Sonny.
Yeah, awesome. It's great to see you again during these COVID times. Spencer and I used to play music together when I played drums and Spencer played bass. But now I was...
both of those instruments up.
What's that?
Those are both in our past. We would never touch those again.
Exactly, precisely. It's all about guitar now. I mean, it took me 4 decades to finally discover the truth that guitar is in fact the best instrument. So I understand that in the last while, you've actually become quite adept at building and modifying and upgrading guitars. Can you first just sort of walk me through your musical past? Like, where are you coming from musically?
I started on the piano in the 3rd or 4th grade. 5th grade, I asked for a saxophone and they gave me a trumpet.
That one.
Ooh, saxophone. $200.
So I played that through high school. Our school's jazz band had a electric bass in it, and I thought that was really nifty. So I got myself a Squier P bass from Guitar Center for like $100 and some change, which was basically an infinity to a 7th grader, like the most money anybody had ever spent. But and I actually still have that bass, and I've been playing that. I played that through high school, early college. I played more bass, and I bought an instrument that I had no right. I was not in any way proficient enough to have purchased, but I got myself a Japanese-made Jaguar bass, which I still have. Now, I've been working in schools most of my adult life, and every once in a while, I get a teacher band going. And I was a tech guy at high school. I started playing with some of the teachers there. None of them had an electric guitar. They only played acoustic. I bought a Telecaster, a Squier Telecaster, again, for $100 and some change from a Guitar Center so that he could play it. Yeah, then, fast forward 10 years, we played music together. I've played with bands at my schools and stuff. But when my daughter was born, I realized how much couch time I was going to be doing. And I found that old Telecaster sitting in my dad's garage. So I brought that back down to LA with me. And that's kind of when I started actually getting interested specifically in the 6-string guitar. So 2018, I think it was December 2018, I got my hands back on a 6-string instrument and started playing that with some regularity.
So, you're someone who has a lot of experience playing music, playing on different instruments, learning how each instrument, contributes to the whole. When you landed on guitar, what were some of the differences you were finding between, guitar and bass, guitar and, some of the brass and the keys? Like, what does it do for you?
Initially, my 7th grade thinking about why bass over guitar was bass looked easier to me. I played the ukulele a little bit in college, which gave me the confidence in my ability to bend my fingers. I mean, there are chords you can play on a bass, but it's a lot less of a chordal instrument than a guitar is. And I didn't have the confidence in shaping my hands to make the chords. Once I'd kind of gotten over that hurdle through the ukulele, the idea to start playing guitar again made a little bit more sense. And trying to unpack the guitar in terms of as a chordal instrument, thinking about it, composing chords, and the sort of even if you don't set out to learn a little music theory, good luck. You're gonna kind of, whether you want to or not, have to learn a little bit of music theory to play even rudimentary guitar. And so that was a big difference for me because the bass is so mono note. You can't play 2 notes at the same time on the trumpet. I guess you can play more than 1 note on the same time on the piano, but that's just showing off, really. And who has time for that? So kind of getting my brain around a chordal instrument was interesting. And just the, the fret size was a big jump for me.
Yeah.
But again, just confidence building, like figuring that out really made it fun. And I think because I had such a basis, I had some quick initial success having picked up the guitar, which, like there's nothing like quick success to lull you into a full sense of security and keep you coming back from it. And let me be clear, that quick initial success was the end of the success. Like that's kind of where it stopped.
So you're getting into guitar, you're playing it, you're having a good time with it. What is the moment when you decide, gee, I think I'm going to either build a new guitar or upgrade one of the guitars I have?
So I was playing that Telecaster. I ended up purchasing myself a Fender Duosonic HS.
Mm-hmm.
So like that Telecaster became like my take to school guitar. And so the HS was like good, and it was just fine the way it was, and there was no reason to mess with it. And so I think the first thing I did in terms of modding a guitar was with that Telecaster that was, 10 years old at that point, and I had no real affinity for outside of it being a guitar that I had. I'm not crazy about Telecaster aesthetics. I don't like the super skinny headstock. I don't really like just the single coil. Like I think it's not the sound that I like necessarily from a guitar. So I was very initially willing to like try something out. And at the time, my wife and I were living close to a little guitar shop in Marina Del Rey that's awesome. And I think the first thing I did was I went in there and asked if they had a Stratocaster pickup.
Yeah.
And the dude just went in the back and like found one on a shelf and handed it to me for a very nominal fee. And so I went home, or I actually did it at school because I was living in an apartment, and soldering in an apartment sucks. But I swapped in that Telecaster pickup, and it wasn't that hard. Earlier on, like a few years prior to that, I had resoldered the connection between, like on my original P bass, the audio in the jack had come loose. So I just resoldered the points there. I had the confidence to do that pickup on the Telecaster because I had seen the interior of a guitar.
Yeah.
And realized there's not that much stuff in there.
Yeah.
There's like no moving pieces. I had somebody watching me work on a guitar at one point ask where the circuit board was.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's good. There's none of that. You can, I guess, if you want to get really fancy, but like it's like 1940s technology, and it hasn't fundamentally changed all that much.
Yeah.
So it's pretty straightforward in there.
If you know how to complete a circuit and how to ground something. By the way, really quickly, quick tip, the input jack, something I do when I get a new guitar is you can actually get these tiny little washers that are pronged. They basically have teeth on the inside ring of the washer, and you put that inside the input jack and then reattach the input jack to the body of the guitar, and that prevents it from twisting around every single time you put in your cable. Because when input jacks get loose, everyone tends to try to screw you want to try to screw it in, righty tighty, and what you wind up doing is just cutting the wires, right? So this is a really cool little trick. You actually get one of these little washers. They're like a dime, and you put that in there, and the thing never moves, left to right. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I bought the wrong neck for that. That's a GNL Tribute Doheny body, and the neck I bought was wrong, so I had to actually do that sanding by hand to get it to seat correctly.
But then what you have to like measure from the 12th fret to make sure that your scale length is still intact and everything. And
exactly. I mean, you have a little bit of wiggle room in your bridge. If you were to like be off a millimeter, you could always throttle up your bridge, but then you're potentially risking your ability to adjust your bridge very much. But so slightly scarier move. Really, that Telecaster, I already had a guitar that worked, and the Telecaster sort of became my Frankenstein. Like it was my creature to mess with. And so I ended up putting a humbucking hot rail in the bridge position because it was like $10 off of Amazon or eBay or something. Found I'm a Bigsby clone. That just screws on. Because it wasn't a pass-through body, I didn't even have to like reroute the strings. So I just screwed that onto the base of the body. And, eventually I found Squier did the Paranormal series a couple weeks last year, and they released the Supersonic, which has a really interesting wiring configuration. It has no tone knob on it. It's independent volumes for each of the two pickups. So I was like, that's a cool idea. And so I tried to wire that up without a switch. I didn't even want to have a switch. I wanted to go super minimalist, just those two knobs to control the mix from the neck pickup. But I'm not a clever enough person to have figured out how to make that work. So I just redid that. I put a switch back in place, but now it has a Squier supersonic wiring in that telly body with a Strat neck and a Strat pickup in the neck and a bridge pickup that has, like a mini humbucker in it and has a huge tremolo on the back end. It's just become a really fun guitar.
Wow.
And I think kind of the attraction to me of the whole modding thing is like, I never hated that guitar. It was a fine guitar. It was, worth every cent that I paid for it. But like, because I've put so much of myself into it, because I spent so much time getting burned by my soldering iron and trying to figure out why it won't do what I want it to, and rerouting the wires and then having to pull that and try again and all of these different things. Now it's my guitar, right? Yeah. There is no other Telecaster that is a mess like mine.
Yeah.
It's mine, and I think that's really important to me. I have a couple of guitars that I have no interest in modding because like they're too valuable. Like that Japanese Jaguar bass is great. That is a super good bass. It's a beautiful instrument. All I would do is make it worse. But with a $125 or $150 Telecaster Squier, like it could become a really expensive hobby if you want it to be. If you start, you can buy these, and I redid a Squier Mustang for my nephew when I found out he was learning to play guitar, because those are just, I think, dollar for dollar, like the coolest instrument you can buy.
Yeah, that's the very first guitar I ever bought when I just started getting into guitar. Yeah.
And I did that for him, and it was like a birthday present. So I put in Seymour Duncan pickup in the I put in a Fat Cat, like the humbucker size P90 in the neck. It's a great pickup. Like, I'm glad that I spent the money there. But I've also bought a lot of pickups off of like Amazon. I've bought some Wilkinson pickups for a Strat that I did that were great. They were super cheap for the 3 pickups. And I've bought pickups off of like Guitar Fetish GFS pickups are like, $30, $40 in that neck of the woods for the pickup.
Wow.
Like, I don't think it has to be this huge expenditure of money. It can be pretty cheap. And at least for me, going to the local guitar shop and asking for spare parts has been very successful.
That's pretty cool, yeah. I'm sure that doesn't necessarily occur to people. But I wanted to ask you really quickly, going back to the Bigsby clone, so did your guitar have a fixed bridge, or do you replace the entire bridge with the vibrato arm?
With the Telecaster, this isn't the traditional like ashtray style.
Yeah.
But it's just it's a top loader. So the strings would have just ended at the backside of the bridge here.
Got
so
it.
With Bigsby, you're just running the strings the extra distance, or the Bigsby clone, the tremolos.
Okay, great. So you just run it to an extra length to the new bridge, basically.
You need to have a bridge that is already a top loader to do that. It worked with that guitar.
So you've done pickups, you've done input. Have you replaced pots?
Yeah, that's one of those ones. I mean, like, inevitably, if you're going to do anything with the guitar's wiring, you're going to be dealing with the pots.
Mm-hmm.
And I've certainly had bad pots, like pots that were broken. They're the hardest for me because I'm not a particularly competent solderer. I've definitely dealt with pots. And at this point, having messed with so many guitars and torn so many pots out of so many different guitars, I just have a collection of old ones now that I can just kind of go through. I mean, that's the fun part about doing this, is that you end up with so many spare parts that then need to go buy more.
Yeah.
Is greatly diminished. Becomes a little bit less of a hustle on the funds. But I think for me, the hardest part about working on a guitar is grounding out the guitar to the potentiometer. You solder to the metal shell of the pot, and with a $15 soldering iron, it's hard to get the pot hot enough to accept the solder. It would be totally disingenuous for me not to mention, I have a really dear family friend who is an electrical engineer, who has been so supportive and talked me through the process so many times. He designed a switch for me I have that Duo Sonic. I put in Seymour Duncan makes a humbucker that is one hot rail and then a mini P90 under the hot rail.
Uh-huh.
So we he designed a switch for me that would have it be, so not just coil tapping, but it can be the rail, it can be the P90, it can be a humbucker in series, or it can be a humbucker in parallel. So it's a four-way switch off of that single pickup on top of the neck pickup. So like I could never have figured that out on my own. So
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really thankful to him. Rich is the best.
All right, give him a shout out. Who are we talking about?
Gray. Rich Gray is really, really the best guy when you are super lost. But then
That's
also
awesome.
like in getting into this, there's so much documentation on the internet.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So I'm assuming you're probably mainly learning a lot of this just from online, right?
Yeah, a lot of you can look up basically any wiring diagram you want for whatever guitar you're interested in. It's probably out there, and they're not that hard to read usually. And then there's forums that people post on. It feels like at this point, if you have had the thought, like if you have a question about it, somebody else probably has as well. So just ride their coattails.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Also, did you install a kill switch on one of these guitars?
Did for my actually I have a whole yes, for my nephew's Mustang, I did put an arcade style kill switch on the pickguard.
Nice.
So that he could get that cool like Tom Morello effect.
Yep.
Which that's a really easy mod. That's a super like straightforward one, and it's a fun effect too to just have to take your guitar from like full chord to off to back to full with the push of a button. Yeah, really easy mod. That's a fun one. I ended up purchasing a whole bag of those kill switches. That's just sitting, like, I don't know. I just have to think about what guitar needs a kill switch, because you have to have the space. That's the biggest issue. Is
right.
A lot of times you're limited by what you can do unless you feel like you want to reroute the body. The pre-existing body cavity becomes sort of the biggest limiting factor in terms of what you can add or not add. But yeah, kill switches are fun.
Okay, so can we talk about the guitar that you built from scratch, that you literally honed out of a piece of wood, right? Is that the one sitting right back there?
Yeah, it's this guy. This is one I built over Christmas break a couple years ago. At the time, my wife and I were living in an apartment. My dad is a carpenter. So when we went up to visit for the holidays, I asked like, hey, Dad, do you want to do a project with me? And so I had bought some poplar from a lumberyard down here. And I had rough cut it into the two just blocks. So that's a 2-slab guitar.
Okay.
And we got up there for Christmas, and my dad and I spent a ton of time in the garage sticking those two pieces of wood together. And, you know, I had created a paper template for the general body shape I wanted. And we broke his router, and then, you know, he had another router that we were able to use. It was a really fun project. And it was like so much the blind leading the blind in terms of like, he's an excellent woodworker. He's a master craftsman, but he never built a guitar. And I'm a hack. Like, I don't know. I'm bad at wood. Wood is hard to deal with. And so like together, it was really fun figuring it out. And it was such a low stakes project because, like, you know, I'd paid whatever for the wood, but it didn't matter if it didn't work out. Like, it was just a fun opportunity to experiment with it. And so, yeah, it ended up, we were limited by having the 2 weeks break. So we got the thing shaped, and we got it back. I got it back down to LA, and I had, like, you know, done a really simple wiring. The wiring configuration on it is just a Telecaster, but with P90s instead of two single coil. Well, I mean, they are single coils, but P90s instead of like regular single coils. And I was never super satisfied with it. The paint, I'm looking at just the PSA, painting guitars sucks. It is the worst. Like, I've seen all of those kit guitars on like Etsy, like they're on Amazon, and I'm so tempted by them. But having painted a bunch of guitars now, I'm very bad at it. It's really hard to get a nice finish. But anyway, I was really dissatisfied with how that guitar came out. It felt too blocky. It felt really big on my lap. It just wasn't where I wanted it to be. So I kind of decided that I felt like a plastic surgeon. I was just drawing directly on the body of this slab of wood that I had, and, you know, with a marker, trying to figure out what a better cutaway would look like and how I could, you know, change some of the curves on it. And this last year, I spent the time to actually cut it back to the shapes and sand it and refinish it and do the whole thing again. And now I'm deeply, deeply satisfied. I just wanted like to be super clear. I only built the body.
You bought a neck.
The neck is purchased. G&L Guitars sells their like B stock
Oh yeah.
Indonesian made tribute series stuff off their website.
Yeah.
And they're really like they you know, there's some need for the frets aren't, you know, perfectly dressed or anything. They're not finished,
Yeah.
but for the money, the G&L stuff is great.
Yeah.
The stuff, I mean, their guitars are really great, but the stuff that they sell, the parts wise, is also awesome.
Yeah. I think that's a huge source for a lot of people who are getting into modding and building. Oh yeah, so you mentioned frets. I mean, have you done any filing or polishing of frets? Yeah.
I've cleaned up fret edges. I haven't had the need to go back and like, you know, re-level frets or anything. That one's definitely kind of a tool up in terms of like the gear required isn't just like an emery board from CVS. So at some point, you know, it's on the list of like luthier tools I would like to buy, but I have not had the opportunity to do that yet.
Yeah, I had to polish the frets on an Epi Les Paul that I got. I had to like buy that tool. And it is kind of hard because you have to make sure that you're not sanding the neck. And so it's a lot of, you know, painter's tape, and you really have to take your time and be patient. I learned that, you know, kind of on the job. Thankfully, it was like a $129 guitar, so.
It's a nice feeling. I like cheap guitars.
Right, yeah, for sure. You really can turn a cheap guitar into a nice sounding guitar that you really enjoy playing.
That's the most important thing for me is like, objectively, some of these guitars, like that Telecaster, probably in somebody else's hands wouldn't be like, they're not going to love it as much as I do.
Right.
It makes me really happy.
Yeah. Are there any kind of tone or sustain or any other types of qualities that you've noticed about the guitar that you shaped? Like, is there anything you know, unique to it that you can hear?
In the second shaping, I was a lot more concerned with how it felt, and so now it's actually a pretty slim guitar.
Yeah.
Its body of it is not huge, so I really like how comfortable it is. It's not a super heavy guitar either. I come from playing basses, which are all too heavy, but the feel of it's pretty nice. I'm not over the moon about those P90s, and there's a wiring quirk I haven't had time to work out with it, so I can't 100% evaluate how playability wise it's great. Tonally, there's more electronic stuff I would like to mess with that I just haven't had time to do. But no, I really like that guitar. Again, it's my dad and I made that. Like, that's a cool Spencer and his dad thing, and that feels really nice to hold it. And it's now glittery orange, which is like I don't own an additional glittery orange guitar. So just aesthetically, there's a really cool look to that of having it be so custom.
I can't tell from here. Is it a satin finish or is it a gloss finish?
It's a glossy finish. I don't know if I would say it's a gloss finish.
Gloss-like.
It's really hard. Well, I mean, like, you get into some guitar history stuff, but like the fenders coming out of the like Fullerton plants and the Corona plants were all painted with auto paint. So you have like initially nitrocellulose clear coat on the top.
Which, by the way, do not use modern day cleaner that you buy in the bottle on those guitars. It will mess it up. Yeah, it's got to be a urethane finish.
Yeah, and then they switched over to, I mean, like literally they were painted with car paint, but they then switched over to like most of the guitars today, unless they're going for like super vintage correct, are done with a polyurethane finish.
Yeah.
But getting polyurethane to that level is so hard. I've tried wipe on poly, I've tried spray poly, I've thought about buying these like mix in can 2-part automotive clear coats that like everybody I see using them is wearing like a full hazmat suit. So I'm kind of hesitant to do that in my garage. No, that's the worst, is trying to get a good finish. I've got a Squire I bought off of Craigslist or OfferUp for like $40 that I made into like a real like project guitar, wanting to redo everything on it. including taking all of the paint off and redoing the paint. And I could never get it past sort of having kind of an orange peel sort of texture,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
fine. It just sort of bugs me. I cheated on the one I built with my father in that I used Montana paints. It's MTN is how they label on their cans. They make a glitter clear coat.
Yeah,
All of the imperfections of that guitar have glitter in them now, so you can't see them quite as easily.
yeah.
It's my favorite product on the market. It's so nice to just spray over things that aren't 100% correct and have the glitter cover it. I've used a lot of cans of a polyurethane spray from, I think Rust-Oleum is the parent company, but it's under a different label. And it gets me okay results, but I have yet to be able to achieve, like, even the cheapest factory guitar has a better finish than anything
Yeah.
I've been able to achieve.
Yeah.
So I have delusions of buying an air compressor and a spray nozzle.
Yeah.
But I've even like pondered taking my guitars to like auto body shops and be like, please just spray it with clear coat. But I Googled that and people have tried and it's been expensive and not 100% successful.
Speaking of finish, every guitar I own right now, I actually sanded the back of the neck for faster play up and down. What are your necks like?
I don't super care. I think that's probably just my lack of skill more than anything, of like it being a super noticeable thing. I'm like 50-50. Some of my guitars have gloss necks, some of them have satin. It's never been something the way that I play that I've been like, oh, this is a problem. I was initially afraid when I was redoing that cheap Stratocaster from OfferUp or Craigslist or whatever. When I was, refinishing the neck, I was afraid that it would end up being sticky or something. But the polyurethane spray, I ended up giving it kind of a nice matte finish. I think that's awesome that you did it yourself there. It's steel wool. What was the
Yeah, it's even less than that. It's Scotch Brite, a green scouring pad. And again, that's what's so incredible, right? I had this problem. I looked it up on the internet, and there were like a million YouTube videos that talked about how you can do this on your own. And it was really so easy, and I was shocked I was able to do it. But yeah, I think it depends on your own chemistry, and like for me, I tended to kind of get stuck if I'm trying to go up and down pretty quickly. So I really felt like I wanted to do it, and it did help tremendously. It really, like, for me, it made such a big difference in being able to go up and down the neck.
I saw a post on a forum today with somebody who had put in they had a Telecaster. They'd put in something in the bridge and they were like, now what pickup should I put in the neck? And somebody in the comments posted like, well, what's wrong with the neck pickup you have? And then he was like, I like it. It's like, okay, well then just use that. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Like that's kind of, I think the danger is like, don't just do it to do it. And I've certainly just modded things for the sake of modding them, not like with a whole lot of purpose.
Right.
And like, it's fun. I guess if you enjoy the process, then by all means. But if you're working with like $100 pickups, that's a real expensive hobby for like poops and giggles or whatever.
Yeah.
I think modding to address an issue and modding for the sake of modding are like definitely considerations to take into account. Like I have this pick guard I did. This was the initial pick guard I put on that Stratocaster. I just threw away the one that came with it. And I added an additional switch here because the traditional Stratocaster switching, you can never have all three pickups on at the same time.
Uh-huh.
So I just added a manual override so that I could activate the neck pickup when these two were on, right? And again, there's some wiring issue there that I need to work out, but like that for me was addressing a specific concern of like, well, I want to hear what it sounds like with all three.
Right.
Like not life or death, but it wasn't just there to be there. Like the kill switch I put on my nephew's guitar is cool. And like when he's older and goes through a Rage Against the Machine phase, that might like click more for him. But that one was really just a mod to mod,
Right. Well, Yeah, not to torture an analogy here, but it's kind of like when you're playing, some things you play because you love that song and you want to learn that song and enjoy it and play it, and some things you play because of the technique that's in that song is a technique that you're looking to, to develop, right? And then other days you're just playing, scales and you're working on your theory. So I assume, it's more expensive to to mod for modding sake, but I'm sure it's kind of like that. Like you're at once sort of creating the guitars that you want while at the same time developing your skills in modding and building, right?
That Stratocaster was very much a project. Like I got it not because I'm like crazy about Stratocasters, but like I wanted to do everything on it. I wanted to strip the paint. I wanted to, make sure that the fret ends were really smooth and, not cutting my hands up. And I wanted to put in a new nut and get the new nut exactly where I wanted it to be. And I wanted to put in new tuners. I wanted to do everything on it.
Yeah.
And, for $40 for that initial guitar, like, money well spent. Later guitars, like the Doheny, that was it wasn't a hugely expensive process, but I was dealing with pieces there that like I wasn't interested in messing around with too much.
Yeah.
Just the bridge the GNL floating dual fulcrum bridges are awesome. It's a really, really nice tremolo. So like my willingness to do anything except for install that stock is like super limited. It's in there stock and it's good, and I'm going to leave it,
Speaking of nuts, do you cut your own nuts or do you buy pre-cut?
Pre-cut. I never tried a brass nut.
Yeah.
I've seen some brass nuts. I have a Squier Bass 6 where the low E string sits too high on it.
Yeah.
And I can obviously just stand that out. But I've, for $12, a nut is a really easy replacement.
Yeah.
So I thought about doing a brass nut in there. No, I haven't tried like just getting a straight one, brand new out of the box and filing it down. Have you?
No, I have not. The latest guitar I bought, which is this Harley Benton CST 24T. It's the PRS 24 clone. So it has a whammy bar, and the nut was a little bit grabby out of the box. So I am not very adept just yet at setup and all that. So I actually took it to my tech guy, and he got a plain uncut template bone nut and cut it himself and installed that to ensure that the strings were going to be able to return back to tune when I use the whammy bar. So, but no, I have not attempted it yet.
A quick fix that I've heard from I don't know if you've watched 60 Cycle Hum, the YouTube channel.
Oh right, yeah.
Sure. That guy's awesome. But he just uses a little bit of pencil graphite in there to create some lubrication.
Yep, I've got my mechanical pencil on hand here for it. Yeah, there's also I have a product that's it's Big Ben's nut sauce is so when changing strings you can just put a little dab of that in there and that helps too.
I'm always surprised, like a place that I've really gotten to practice guitar stuff is because I teach high school students. A lot of them have a guitar or they were given a guitar by somebody that may not be in the best shape, or like whatever the guitars. I didn't take great care of my high school P bass, so like I get it. It's fun to get to teach the kids how to change the strings, but like I feel like a lot of people aren't even doing that as much as they should be, or like I don't know. There's you could extrapolate this out into a cultural conversation about disposability and sort of like the extent to which we do or do not own the products that we theoretically do own. Like it's hard to change the oil on harder to change the oil. Like I can't do work on my car. It's got a computer. I don't have a code checker. Like I'm paralyzed. I used to be semi-competent and now I feel incompetent when it comes to my car. But I feel like guitars aren't that complicated. We just don't. Right. Not everybody knows that they're not all that complicated.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And so like getting the opportunity to like crack the guitar open and show the kid this or show the kid that, in terms of like, oh, here, we can get rid of that fret buzzing by, just adjusting the bridge a little bit.
What about like the truss rod and the neck relief? Do you mess around with that?
I have a little bit for them, like when it's I mess around with it when it's bad. I think I enjoy this hobby because I don't always perceive all of the things that are wrong. You and I were talking about this. I like to play with a lot of overdrive. So that really expensive pickup, I'm probably not hearing it, like, right. And again, the level at which I am playing, I'm probably not as cognizant as I should be. Again, I think the truss rod feels, to me at least, a little scary because it's, you're forcing the wood in one direction or another, but it's a hex key turn.
Right.
And again, there's so many YouTube videos where somebody can politely walk you through how scary or not scary it needs to be to just make a quarter turn on a hex key.
Yeah, I look forward to being able to take on a little of this, the way that you already have. I've been a little timid about trying to really do anything with any of my guitars. Again, I don't feel like I need to, but if at some point, right, I do need to, I feel like, hearing everything you've had to say makes me feel like it's something that I could potentially learn.
If I can do it, I promise you, very literally anybody can do it. I have a degree in art, Sonny. That was the choice I made in college. No, it's super doable. Like, there are hard parts, and to do things 100, like, I think you have to approach it with okay, this might get screwed up, but probably not I can't imagine what you would do that would mess a guitar up past the point of playability. Hard for me to conceive of unless you decide that you think it would be cool to put like a right angle bend at the 12th fret, like that won't work. That you ruin that neck. But like, how bad can you do it? You might have to resolder something. You can fry a switch, I guess. Like, I don't know. I think if you're not using super expensive pieces, it's a low risk experiment.
Yeah.
Obviously unplug your soldering iron because gets really hot. But like, yeah, I don't know. I think for me, the fun is in the fact that, so what, okay, then I'll have to fix it again, which I guess that's why I like to do this. Like, my daughter dropped that Stratocaster the other day, like with a thud. And my initial reaction was like, oh no, my Stratocaster. Oh, okay, well, it's fine. I'll fix it, I guess. Whatever. Right. Yeah. How bad? She's not going to break the neck. And so what? That neck was, I don't know, if it was half of the guitar and I paid $40, I guess it's a $20 neck. So like, okay.
I'd like to get to the exciting part. It looks like you're badging your guitars now too.
That is a super fun exercise in narcissism. It's really fun. I won't do it to every guitar because most of them I haven't done enough. Like, on the bass sticks, I put in a new tailpiece. Yeah. That doesn't justify me scraping off Squire and writing my name on it. But yeah, with like the one I did with my dad and the Franken Telecaster and that Stratocaster I rebuilt from the ground up. I've decal paper is, $15 or something off of Amazon. And if you already have some clear coat, you're good to go. Fun little graphic design exercise. And again, vanity. For my next, I don't know, like, I have no need to do another project right at the minute, but I would actually like to use that decal paper on the body a little bit. Yeah. And do some patterning on the top side of the guitar.
Having a last name that lends itself to a cool musical pun too. And yeah. So that's cool too. And we'll throw up a still of this too, a close-up of the badge, the sandstone badge. Do you think you'll ever make a guitar out of coffee beans or recycled cans or something like that?
Like, I've seen a lot of like acrylic body guitars, or like where people are pouring epoxy to, coat colored pencils or whatever.
Right.
I saw a glass guitar.
Yep. Cement.
I live in Southern California. This is where the electric guitar was by and large invented. Like, I kind of like electric guitars for what they are. I don't have the wherewithal to like be creative enough to, I don't know, an acrylic one's kind of interesting because I don't feel like that would be the worst material to work with, but I like bad punk rock, heavily overdriven. That's a little glam rock, I think. That doesn't aesthetically make sense for me. I don't know. I applaud people who are doing cool things, because why not do something cool? Les Paul's first guitar was like, I mean, I think he called it the log because it was like a piece of wood
Yes.
with a neck on it, you know? So like, go nuts, guys. Play with
Yep.
the form. I kind of like the classical form. I'm super into just sort of like what the guitar is starting in like, 1950.
Right.
Kind of there forward.
What do you think is going to be your next project?
I'm always, I don't know, it's whatever looks good. I would like to do another guitar, like just finding a really cheap old guitar and seeing what I can turn that into. I've upgraded my my P bass that I bought when I was 12. I would kind of like to build a bass for the Stratocaster. I wired it so that it's like quick disconnect.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Swap the pick guards on it really fast if I wanted to. And I've been thinking about, like, I've got the classic Strat 3 3 single coils. Now I have a single GNL single coil in it, so it's like the Eldritch Esquire wiring setup. I don't know, I've been thinking about like what could be another pick guard for that Strat that might be fun. I might do another pick guard. The Fender Lead, which they just did, the Lead 3 is a really cool configuration, like a double humbucker in a Stratocaster body with independent pickup switching. I see a guitar and I think it's really interesting. Like the Supersonic is basically upside down. It's got that like left-handed headstock, and it's got the reverse offset. So doing something like that would be cool. Fender made the Swinger guitar. It is the coolest looking guitar in the world, and I love it so much. And I cannot afford the Japanese reissue of it. Just a spectacularly strange instrument.
Awesome.
So I kind of want to do something like that, cut another body. But yeah, that Fender Swinger, recutting a Fender Swinger body shape would be super fun.
So Spencer Sands, thank you so much for talking with us today. Super fun. I loved hearing all about your music journey, your guitar journey, and you stepping into this world of building and modifying, not being intimidated by it, doing your research, taking some baby steps, looking into, what can I do, and learning as you go, and then sort of, taking on kind of bigger and bigger projects. Because like you said earlier, playing an instrument in which you had a hand in actually creating its qualities, I think is probably a more kind of spiritual experience than just playing one in which you didn't.
I don't feel like I 100% own something until I have done something to it. It's such an easy thing to mess with. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not try something? Even if it is just putting a kill switch in or adding that third switching option on a Stratocaster. Like, there's some little baby projects you can do, or just filing your fret ends with an emery board. Like, there's some little tiny things. Taking the gloss finish off of a neck.
Yeah.
Right. And now that's, I mean, it was your guitar. You literally owned it. But now it is unlike its, manufactured brethren.
Yeah. I definitely, there's just sort of this little kind of surge of excitement that like, oh, it plays the way I want it to play now because I did this thing to it. Right. Even though it's probably the simplest thing you could possibly do to a guitar, it's still kind of cool to know that I was able to change it in a way that suits me better, right? So that was pretty neat. The next project you do you promise to come back and show it to us?
I will happily confess to the crime publicly with you, Sonny.
Perfect. Thank you again so much. We really appreciate this.
Thank you for creating the channel, man. This is awesome.
As always, thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you learned something from Spencer and might be inspired to look into modifying or building your own guitars. Thanks again. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one on Strange Device.